Let us read Proverbs 28, verse 27. Whoever gives to the poor will not want, but he who hides his eyes will get many a curse. A man used to walk the same busy street every day on his way to work. Each morning he passed a woman sitting quietly on the sidewalk. She didn't beg aloud. She simply sat there with tired eyes, a small sign propped in front of her. For weeks, the man ignored her. He told himself he was too busy, that someone else would help, that maybe she wasn't all that needy. One morning, something changed. As he passed by, he made eye contact with her just for a moment. That day, he couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't just ignore a person, he had ignored a need. Next morning, he stopped to offer a warm drink, a few words, and a listening ear. He later said, I realized the hardest part wasn't giving, it was choosing to see. This is the heart of what Scripture teaches us about compassion. It's not just about what we give, but whether we allow ourselves to truly see. The wisdom of Proverbs speaks directly into this reality. Two ways of living, one open-hearted and compassionate, the other closed off and indifferent. Scripture constantly reveals the heart of God, leaning toward the poor, the vulnerable, and the overlooked. Psalm 68 describes him as a father of the fatherless and a protector of widows. These are not just poetic titles. They reveal him as one who identifies with those who are often forgotten by society. When the people of Israel were preparing to enter the promised land, in Deuteronomy 15 verse 7 to 11 records God's instructions on how to treat the needy. They're not to harden their hearts or shut their hands against a poor brother. Rather, they were to open their hands freely and give generously without reluctance. God even addressed the subtle excuses that can creep into our thinking, the calculations, the hesitations, the quiet justifications for withholding help. What stands out in that passage is not just the command to give, but the posture of the heart. You shall give to him freely, and your heart shall not be grudging when you give. 1 John 3:17 asks, if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need and yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Notice that phrase, closes his heart. Compassion begins not just with seeing a need, but letting it touch our hearts. Proverbs warns us against hiding one's eyes. It's often a deliberate choice to look away, to remain comfortable, to avoid being interrupted. And this can happen not because we are cruel, but because we are busy. We have responsibilities, pressures, and our own concerns. Yet, Scripture reminds us that a life aligned with God always makes room for compassion. Whoever gives to the poor will not want. This promise doesn't guarantee material wealth to the generous. It points to something deeper, God's provision and sufficiency. There is a richness that comes from living with an open hand. It's a richness of peace, of purpose, of participating in eternal fullness. Proverbs 11:24 captures this beautifully. One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. To the world, this feels upside down, but this is the economy of God's kingdom. When we give with a generous heart, it breaks the grip of selfishness. It teaches us to trust God as our provider rather than clinging tightly to what we have. And kindness often finds its way back to us through relationships, through community, through a sense of fulfillment that money cannot buy. On the other hand, the verse continues, he who hides his eyes will get many a curse. That may sound strong, but it reflects a serious truth. Ignoring need doesn't protect us. It diminishes us. Every time we choose indifference, our hearts grow a little harder. We begin to become insensitive to the things that matter most to God. The many a curse can take many forms. It may be the loss of respect from others, or a growing sense of emptiness within. It can be troubled conscience that whispers when we try to justify our inaction. It always reflects a life that is drifting out of alignment with God's heart. Proverbs 14:31 says, Whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. The way we treat people, especially the vulnerable, is a reflection of how we honor God, because every person, regardless of their situation, is made by Him. Proverbs 22:2 reminds us, the rich and the poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. There is no hierarchy of worth in God's eyes. To dismiss someone because of their need is to dismiss the one who created them. In the same chapter, verses 22 to 23, warn us not to exploit or crush the afflicted, because the Lord Himself will take up their cause. Proverbs 19:17 stresses on this. Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and He will repay him for his deed. The act of generosity lands directly in God's hands. He values and repays it. This kind of life doesn't come from obligation alone. It flows from relationship. Jeremiah 22:16 defines the true knowledge of God. He judged the cause of the poor and needy, then it was well. Is not this to know me? Declares the Lord. Knowing God is not just about what we believe, it's about how His heart begins to shape ours. In the parable of the rich fool, the Lord described a man who experienced great abundance but thought only of himself. In all his plans for his future comfort, he never considered God or others. And in a moment, everything was taken from him. His mistake wasn't that he had wealth, it was that his life revolved around it. The Lord also spoke of a rich man and a poor man who lay at the rich man's gate, sick and suffering. There's no record that the rich man was cruel. He simply did nothing. And yet, in God's eyes, that indifference mattered deeply. These stories remind us that compassion is not optional for those who follow God. It is evidence of a transformed heart. Even in the early church, this priority remained central. When Paul met with other leaders, among their primary reminders was that the Gentile churches should remember the poor. And he underlined his total agreement, describing himself as eager to do this. Living with compassion doesn't require wealth or great opportunities. It begins with awareness, expressed through small, consistent acts of kindness. A shared meal, a little money, a listening ear, a willingness to notice what others ignore. These are the ways compassion takes shape in everyday life. As we practice this, our hearts and lives begin to align more closely with God's heart. When we encounter a need, we will respond as we are able with willing and open hearts. Let us live with open eyes, tender hearts, and generous hands. Then our lives will testify that we truly know Him. God bless.